Most people think luxury means bigger houses, bigger engines, bigger diamonds. But in the world of high horology, some of the most respected watches are incredibly thin. In fact, the thinner the watch becomes, the harder and more expensive it is to make. Which sounds completely backwards because removing material should make something easier, not harder. So why are collectors obsessed with ultra-thin watches? And why do some of the thinnest watches on Earth cost more than entire luxury cars? Because in watchmaking, thinness is not simplicity. Thinness is war against physics. A mechanical watch movement is already microscopic engineering. Tiny gears, springs, rotors, bridges, all compressed into something that fits on your wrist. Now imagine trying to make all of that thinner without sacrificing durability, power reserve, accuracy, finishing, structural integrity. That's the challenge. Every fraction of a millimeter creates new problems. Parts become weaker. Heat becomes more dangerous. Shock resistance decreases. Even screws become engineering nightmares. And unlike smartphones, mechanical watches cannot rely on software to fix physical limitations. Everything must work mechanically, perfectly. That's why ultra-thin watchmaking is considered one of horology's highest forms of engineering. It's not about adding more. It's about removing everything unnecessary without destroying the soul of the watch. Thin watches communicate something psychologically: restraint, control, maturity. An oversized watch often says, "Notice me." An ultra-thin watch says, "I don't need attention." And strangely, that subtle confidence has become one of luxury's most powerful signals, especially among experienced collectors. Because once someone truly understands watches, they stop chasing loudness. They start appreciating difficulty. A thin watch looks simple, but collectors know simplicity is usually the hardest thing to achieve. That's true in architecture, design, fashion, and especially horology. Real elegance removes excess. Luxury watch brands have quietly been competing in the ultra-thin war for decades. Not because normal people care, but because watchmakers care. And in luxury, the respect of insiders matters more than mass approval. Brands like Patek Philippe, Audemars Piguet, Vacheron Constantin, and especially Bulgari have pushed thin watchmaking to almost absurd levels. Some movements are thinner than coins, others are barely thicker than a few sheets of paper. And every world record creates prestige not because thinness changes your life, but because it demonstrates mastery. It tells collectors, we can do what others cannot. That's luxury psychology. The impossible itself becomes desirable. There's another reason collectors love thin watches. They disappear on the wrist. A great ultra-thin watch feels almost effortless, comfortable, balanced, elegant under a cuff. There's no aggression to it, no desperation, and maybe that's why many thin watches age so beautifully. They don't chase trends. They avoid visual noise, which makes them feel timeless. The older many collectors get, the less they want watches that dominate the room, and the more they appreciate watches that quietly reward attention. Thin watches are rarely about first impressions, they're about second impressions. The irony is most people will never notice an ultra-thin watch, and that's exactly why serious collectors respect them, because true luxury often becomes less performative over time. At the highest levels of wealth and taste, people stop trying to prove they can afford expensive things. Instead, they search for objects with meaning, precision, history, and craftsmanship hidden beneath simplicity. A thin watch becomes a private experience, not public validation, and maybe that's why ultra-thin watches feel so emotionally different from flashy luxury pieces. One screams wealth, the other whispers understanding. So why do thin luxury watches cost so much? Because making something smaller is often harder than making it bigger. Because simplicity is deceptive. Because restraint is difficult. And because true craftsmanship often hides itself instead of demanding attention. In a world obsessed with excess, ultra-thin watches remind us that mastery sometimes looks almost invisible. And maybe that's the final irony of luxury. The highest level of sophistication is often the quietest. Would you rather wear a bold, oversized watch or an ultra-thin piece of quiet luxury? Let me know in the comments. And subscribe to The Wrist Edit for more deep dives into watches, craftsmanship, and the psychology of modern luxury.